notice any giant bug webs?
The infestation is growing.
I'm gonna make them pay.
I suspect there's a couple of reasons why you clicked on this review. We are talking Insecticidal from 2005, directed by Jeff Lando. And this is a low-budget creature feature movie. What's the story? Well, it focuses on this sorority house, and we have this one particular kind of nerdy girl, and she's like the pretty ugly girl trope that you kind of got in the 2000s era movies, and she is a one that's studying insects in kind of her basement room, and they're genetically modified insects, and one of the other girls sprays kind of some type of chemical on these to try and kill them, but this ends up making them grow into ginormous sizes, and now these giant bugs are kind of terrorizing this sorority house and a couple of other people who are there, you know, a couple of boyfriends and everything. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it. What works in this movie's favour? So, you know, this is not a high budget movie, so it has certain restrictions, and we will certainly talk about them, but we're talking about the positives here. It's a sort of tongue-in-cheek movie in many ways. It's clearly not taking itself sort of seriously, and as such it has this sort of jokey, almost sex comedy vibe to it, while, you know, we get a lot of the kind of like these male characters, you know, around trying to score with these sorority girls. And bear in mind, this is a 2005 movie, so, you know, it has that that era of kind of filmmaking, so to speak. So it has some kind of like that sort of sex comedy vibe to it. So if you're a fan of that, you may want to kind of check it out. Of course, there is lots of young ladies on display here, many of whom end up taking their tops off. Although there isn't maybe as much nudity as you might expect, there's certainly a little bit of TNA on display here. It has a kind of because it has this kind of jokier tone, you know, we get the kind of this household is cut off from anyone else, so they have to kind of deal with it. So it's a very self-contained movie. We try and have some kind of pseudoscience in regards to, you know, the insect behaviour, and it tries to kind of actually use a little bit of, you know, showing us our main character using her kind of smarts to try and figure out a way to best defend themselves against these kind of bugs, you know, so there is that, I suppose. And, you know, there's some sort of goofy, you know, attacks. There's a little bit of kind of practical kind of gore here, practical makeup on some of the kind of the victims and stuff. We have one girl who sort of gets infected with larvae, and she sort of becomes this kind of zombie sort of type queen of the bugs, and they've used kind of practical kind of makeup with that. And it looks cheap, but it looks okay. And, you know, the cast aren't brilliant, but they're sort of likeable enough, I suppose, in a silly kind of schlocky way. Everyone here is a very sort of broad stereotype, but they're kind of still, you know, goofy, sort of, but lowbrow fun characters, I suppose. Let's talk about what doesn't work. Probably the biggest issue here is the bugs are realised in CGI. And reminding you, this is a 2005 movie, and it's cheap CGI for 2005. So this is probably some of the worst CGI you would have seen. It literally looks like PlayStation graphics, especially when you're watching it nowadays. I mean, even back then, I can't imagine this would ever have been particularly convincing, but these days it's truly kind of like very noticeable CGI. Let me just be kind and say it like that. And these bugs kind of have this kind of weightlessness feel to them, and they never really feel like they're there, and things like this. So you know, the effects are, for the most part, CGI. We do get a little bit of kind of practical VFX here and there, and they're not a huge amount better, if we're being completely honest. I mean, I think the zombie kind of makeup effects are okay, but we do get like these grub things that are practically realised, and they kind of just look like rubber, to be honest. So not brilliant. The casting here, you know, it's clear that they've just hired lots of pretty girls, and that's fine, but there's maybe not as much nudity that you might think for something like this. This almost feels like, you know, it's somewhat sort of restrained on what it could have gone. I mean, if they wanted to make this a really titillating movie, which I suspect some of the kind of the images and the posters that it has sort of tries to sort of sell that fact, but it never goes too much into that kind of respect. And again, that may have been an avenue to kind of really go, but it doesn't, to be honest. The story is very slight. It is just these group of people in a house. Everyone who dies, you know, you're going to expect to die. Everyone who survives, you're going to expect to survive. You know, there's kind of just like hand-wavy sort of reasons why the police aren't coming and things like this. It's an extremely simple story. And even things like, we're meant to have this bug expert, and she's calling like a spider an insect when it's an arachnid. And, you know, there's not a huge amount of kind of science speak in this and things like this, even though there's an attempt to use this character, the pretty ugly girl, as this kind of, you know, boffin, but she doesn't really come across like that. So it's a really throwaway movie. It's a degree of fun. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What were your thoughts? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to you next time.